We're just above Hobbs Hole and Baysdale. And Hobbs Hole is where's the ford crossing and a little bit of a grassy area where people like to picnic. But 90% of them won't even notice it's here, but just up the hill, it isn't even 100 yards if you would get directly up. This is quite surprising. Crater hole, pond. This is actually a bomb crater from the Second World War. The exact details of it are not that clear, how it was formed, because it's not really been documented. But there's two real options. One is that the German bombers, they did target Teesside, which is only a couple of hills away. It's about 10 miles. They targeted Teesside quite a lot during the war, and on the way home, if they had any bombs left over, they'd just drop them out here, or drop them out here, there, anywhere really, just to get home easier. And that's certainly plausible. But another explanation, there was some sort of at Baysdale, which is a very isolated dale. There was only 2 or 3 houses in it. It's still the same. It was actually evacuated during the war, and at one point at least they used to use it as a sort of a target range for sighting weapons and things like that. And I think that the shells actually came from way over there and somewhere near Commondale or White Cross. I'm not sure about all this. So but we would think if that was the case, there would be a lot more bomb holes. So it doesn't really quite ring true. But there are several. This isn't the only one. This is the most striking one because it's still here. It's still full of water. It's quite deep. It looks actually scary, but it's not. It's not more than maybe 3 or 4 feet deep. You can see there's dragonflies full of frog spawn in the spring. And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if there was newts in it, because it just happens to be in quite a wet spot. You can see it's rather rushy all along there. But then the other thing, almost directly up from that, if you notice, we're in line with the road, roughly. You carry on up there. Can you see? No, you can't, because it's too. I'll just zoom in a bit. I'm going to walk up to this. And there's an old ruin up here which has some further interest to it, which I've just forgotten the details, but I'll go up there first and have a look. I've just come into the enclosure through what may or may not be the original entrance. It looks a bit like a way in or out. But I was going to stop there, but it's absolutely crawling with flying ants or some description. I thought it was midges at first, and there are some of them, but then we come up to the house. You've got to remember, of course, that the trackways were different in the past. They were more sort of braided. You had a lot more options. Like now it's like there's the road and you go on the road. But when there was different tracks up the moor, you might take different ones depending on the season or depending on what you were riding or carrying. If you were walking or had a donkey or something, you could have gone over almost any of them. But in a way, there's more of this than you might have thought left. Because the stones they're not good quality stone, but they're usable building stone. You might have thought somebody would have picked up some of this. It's not that far from the road. You wouldn't do it now, but in the past they wouldn't have thought twice about it. So this is I should look up the details when I get home more, but it's reckoned to have been used as a smuggler's sort of hideout, or at least it was noted for being a place where you could buy contraband, which may have been things like. Well, nowadays you think of smokers, tobacco and beer, alcohol, and that may have been involved. But there'd also be things like tea, I suppose relatively high value items to be carried up here. I don't know if they actually hid stuff here, or there just was someone who lived here was known to deal in stuff. It's a drug den now, you can see that. This is just above the old house. You can see there's a gateway there would have gone out onto the moor, so they'd have had a few sheep in here and they're running in and out of the moor. But I mean, when that was still a dwelling, shall I say, there was a lot more of these little mini enclosures in the moor. In a way, that's what the majority of the dwelling places on the moor are more like this, with a quite informal, small field system around them. It's interesting, they were actually pheasants, not grouse. I haven't seen a grouse for a while. Oh, there's one. So you can see there's some evidence there of quite a well-used track. It goes through a bit of a dip in the hilltop, so it's something to kind of aim for. Since there isn't really any water running down there, you would assume that was basically a well-used trackway. Where does it go? Sort of over there, more to the left, or perhaps up there, over the top into Baysdale. There's the road. I mean, some of these, they were sort of still in use like into the 1700s and maybe even 18latest, maybe 1850-ish. When a lot of things became rather more formalised, but they could well have originally been set up, certainly in the Middle Ages, or even it could be based on almost like Iron Age foundations, for all we know. Because a lot of these moors were much more populated in the past. Firstly, the climate was better, and there was more trees, and consequently you could clear a patch in the woodland and have quite a decent bit of farmland for a number of decades. But since then, it doesn't always seem like it, but it's become colder and wetter, despite the current obsession with global warming. And peat started to take over, and the fields became overly acidic. So you got peat and bilberries and heather, and this wiry grass. I'm not quite sure what that's called offhand. Creeping bent or something like that. Molina probably is a good one. And it's very poor grazing. Although you could keep it under control by keeping up the fertility with manure and such like, provided you have a couple of cows or something, or you feed your sheep in here in the winter. Can you imagine if this was the track over to Baysdale and Kildare, and you had to come past this house, and you wouldn't have to going to sort of jump out at you. This would be the track where I'm walking now with your pony. Maybe they used to jump out and try and get you to pay on something. Try and get past before you woke up in the morning. This is definitely the old road. It's just set at a funny angle, and it's a bit odd that there's literally like probably 2 rooms. And the rooms are quite small, but they're it's surprising in a way how small modern rooms are. There's no obvious sign of where there was a fireplace. It wasn't in this end. It must have been the other end. Maybe it had one in the middle and didn't actually have a proper hearth. It would be probably thatched. There's no evidence of any tiles. But the stone walls themselves are not terrible, are they? I like how the heather is growing right along the wall. Like there. I'm thinking this was the way in. It's the most like a doorway. Could be a stone there. So you came into this quite small room, which would maybe have the fire, . You'd certainly be cosy. There'd be room here to hang up your coat and things. There's something in the middle there. Maybe that was the fire. Maybe they had a fire there right in the middle of that. But what was the new? Maybe that was just bedrooms or something. A bedroom, perhaps with another sleeping platform. So I think you came in here, and it would be a little bit bigger than this because walls were falling in. There was a fire there, possibly on a sort of a raised platform, and wooden seat or something here, and perhaps this is where they cooked, so there'd be a pot over the fire. Well, it would be where they cooked. And then through there it would probably have been a bed, 2 beds, and perhaps a sort of upstairs like another bed higher up. Sometimes the beds were in like a cabinet, like a cupboard. So my deduction is the track over the moor, where we now go is further over to the north, was over here, down there, and down to crossing the beck, Baysdale beck, a little bit further up than the present place. But they'd have options, there'd be more than one place you could cross it. The track came up here past this little house, and there was at least 2 little paddocks round it, which some of the walls are actually more or less still there. And I think this was the doorway. You came into this little sort of kitchen type area where you might take your coat off, because in the central area there's a poorly defined, what looks to me like a raised hearth. There'd have been some way for the smoke to escape through the roof. It may not have been a conventional chimney. And then there's a doorway through into the other room where there'd have been 1 or 2 beds and a further sort of storage for extra clothes and things like that. And there may have been an upstairs, not in a conventional sense where you go up the stairs to it, like a loft, perhaps with a 3rd bed or a 4th bed. There may have been certainly room for 2 people and 2 kids. Vintage motorbike going up the hill. But what a place. And we shall find out when I get home. I have seen some information about this. But it has a reputation of being either a haunt of smugglers or where someone traded contraband. It may be completely fabricated. But it's usually, often it's not, there's a degree of truth in these rumours. And we shall find out when we get home if we find the info.